Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Assalamu alaikum, and a very happy Eid Mubarak to all our viewers who just tuned in to this very special broadcast of Eid to PTV World. I'm your host Rida Shah, and with me is the amazing, the very talented.
Why don't you put me on a platter and do the drum roll before you put my name
I
on?
would
Omar,
have
Khalid,
done.
but yes, ladies and gentlemen.
Talented journalist for the last 2 decades.
Yes.
So he's experienced as well.
Yes, that's correct.
And mashallah, mashallah. He
Well, you know,
is,
before, I mean, this is the first. Before
Yeah.
we introduce our guests have interjected inside and they said, why don't we get
we've
part of
known
this
each other for
transmission?
so long.
Yes. Oh yes, we have worked directly
Like part of the family.
with you as well. And ladies and gentlemen, this is Eid al-Azha. This is of course a joyous celebration, but it is also one that reminds us of sacrifice.
Yes.
The sacrifice that Hazrat Ibrahim made for his son, and then of course he was replaced with a sacrificial animal at the last moment, just to let people know how important is the element of sacrifice in our religion, that is Islam. We have also our National Day, 14th of August, that is just
coming
around
up,
the corner,
yeah.
Rida. And you see we have this badge, I have my badge.
I
my
couldn't
flag.
ruin my dress, so I'm sorry.
She said she couldn't ruin her
No,
dress.
with
Can
the
you understand?
pin, you know, the pin, it ruins the dress.
Whatever, Rida. But anyways, double celebrations for us,
Yes.
Eid al-Azha as well as 14th of August.
So, Umar, how is your Eid going so far? And what do you do on your Eid, basically?
Well, I just, you know, take the...
I eat so much meat. You know, I'm a Pathan.
ask his mother.
So
We
let's
have
begin
an
with you.
amazing panel of guests, and you watch them doing serious work on screen, but now we're gonna figure out and try to find out what they do on their Eids and what are they really like. So on my right hand side, we have Miss Muneza Jahangir. She is a fierce, strong and motivated lady. She is a documentary filmmaker, a journalist and the co-founder of South Asian Women in Media, and also on the board of Asma Jahangir Legal Aid Cell. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us. It's an honor to have you here. How is your Eid going so far?
It's going really well. I mean, it's a time where you meet people, where you meet family, where you meet extended family.
Yes.
Part of, you know, we are part of the same profession, so we are also family, and we've known each other for so long, all of us. And it's nice to meet, nice to see Owais Saab, who has been my boss and has been a great source of inspiration to all of us. And of course, my friend here, we've all known each other. So it's, you know, Eid is all about getting together, supporting each other, encouraging each other. And fortunately in our culture, we see less and less of that. So
Yeah.
this is a day where we can really celebrate.
Rejoice and, you
we
know,
can celebrate our unity, we can celebrate our culture, and our culture is all about actually being together. We have
That is
strong
true.
family bonds. We are there for each other in times of need, and I think that really is.
And I think
what
the
it
best
means to
part
be.
of it is you get to do that over food, over meat, over lamb, you know, mutton, beef, whatever,
Okay,
you know.
I understand, Rida, you love meat.
I love
Alright,
meat
we have,
so much.
We have really gotten that message across. But let's go forward and introduce
Yes.
the other guests
Yes.
So
before
now we
they
have-
also start to have that penchant to eat more meat.
So now we have the beautiful Faiza Dawod. She is a gold medalist broadcast journalist and the first female to start her own talk show on private media, and she was also the first female to have her own YouTube channel, and she started it in 2016. Thank you so much, Faiza. Eid Mubarak.
Eid Mubarak to you too,
How is-
Rida, Omar, Eid Mubarak to Muneza, Eid Mubarak to Owais Saab, again my boss, learned a lot from him.
She has been an iconic figure on TV screen. Mashallah, mashallah, she had tremendous presence on screen and grip on content and her production aesthetics, and I am really privileged to have worked with her and Muneza. So both are really talented, and they're very inspiring.
I am a
If they travel to remote region, and obviously both of them do and both of them have done, believe you me, there are girls who look up to them.
I'm
And
one of them.
That's, I mean,
Seriously,
I mean, in a sense that you are privileged to be in the urban center and you know, sort of enjoy all the luxury and exposure, and you've been to, like, you know, sort of really good education institutions. I'm talking about the remote areas.
Yeah.
I really look forward to them. Please talk to them.
No,
Owais Saab is always, he's not only a very good professional journalist, but he's a very generous and kind human being.
Exactly.
And I think I find that in my career, I was very blessed to have, you know, seniors like Talat Hussain, Katrina Hussain, Owais Sahab, who were willing to come forward and teach and not feel like, oh, we can't pass, not that they're very old, but we can't pass the mantle on as yet. Omar and I, you know, I started off from PTV.
Yes.
So PTV was my practical journalism training school. I am, you know, by degree also
Although you
professional
graduated from PTV to other channels, I stayed in my alma mater,
Yes.
let's put it that way.
Uska basic one reason was because I was born and brought up abroad. My parents were always you know, abroad in the UAE, so I had that permission of that 10 months to work in PTV where elections happened, and you know, Musharraf was here, and lots of things actually happened.
Yes.
But I feel I was very privileged. Hearing of Muneza at that time, there were just very, very few female journalists who were proper journalists and who'd not chanced on television and, you know, just come on TV, you know, for the sake of just being on TV.
That is so
because
true.
being on TV for entertainment and being on TV for news is
very
different.
different. It's very
I mean,
different.
both are respectable, but it's very different. You know, you need to have that passion within. Coming back to the question, Rida, Eid is a joyous celebration,
Yes.
and I'm so glad because it's nice to be, you know, with people who we share our opinions with, and you know, our professional problems with, or we've learned from them. But at the same time, I feel that this time, even Eid al-Fitr and even now, I feel a sense of heaviness. You know, with Pakistan in general, because when you think about sacrifice and you think about so many people, you know, obviously prices are going up, economy. I don't want to get into the political discussion because it is a happy moment, but everything is intertwined, right? You can't segregate stuff. So I just think, like, I was thinking, how many people were actually able to, you know, sacrifice something, and then you hear of stories that Eid al-Adha is the time when many families across Pakistan actually get to eat meat once a year, and that just humbles you so much. So it's a very, I feel it's a very happy occasion, but you know, again, a very humbling
But
occasion.
you know, whether it be Ramzan, whether it be other effective of days as well, just as like Eid al-Azha or Eid al-Fitr, it also reminds you that you need to celebrate not only with the people around you, but with those who are less fortunate than yourself, and also share the love, the bond, and the friendship that you can with those who are around you, and try to help those around you. That is what our religion, Islam, also teaches us. Which of course brings us to the third, I mean, no correlation with the religion, but nevertheless the most senior of our guests, Owais, Tohid Saab. I've worked directly under you as well. All of our, in fact, apart from Rida, have worked directly.
We are colleagues.
Exactly. And I've found you to be a thorough gentleman, sir, a thorough professional, and who's never looked at or gone under pressure when deciding what to do, when to do, and how to do, and which person to take for which assignment. And I really admire you, sir, for that, for being as neutral and as apolitical as possible. So, Owais, Tohid Saab, I mean, I don't
he has
have
already forewarned us.
This shows
Look at him. He is such a charmer, and he has been such an experienced broadcast journalist. Then a political, yes. But if you allow me, I'm going to take the point from they left that today Eid al-Azha symbolizes sacrifice.
Exactly.
If we do our own soul searching, are we stuck in rituals, or are we fulfilling the true spirit of sacrifice? I think that we are stuck in the ritual. We are talking about that event, religious event, when Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, you know, sort
was
of
ready to sacrifice his own kid.
yes, Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam. At the time, it was a nomadic society, and your value of wealth was measured on the quantity of cattle. So, are we willing to share our wealth with poor? In a country which is third world country, where like 40% of people living, you know, below the poverty line. So I think that we should observe rituals. At the same time, we should follow the true spirit of sacrifice, which means that rich or affluent class, which are basically making this society hostage. They should start contributing.
And also be more
And
compassionate
donate.
towards the other classes. I think it's very important for all peoples of the society to be compassionate towards each other. That is what
I mean,
Islam
I'm
teaches
not,
us as
I'm
well.
not pushing that Marxist idea that, you know, sort of, if you ask that, you know, sort of you describe Marxism in one line or in a one-liner, then you say distribution of wealth, but it's a fact, and that's what our religion tells us, and that's what this event tells us to observe. That sacrifice is that please sacrifice your wealth, sacrifice your precious things. So are we doing it? So I think that on this day, it's also the day when we should make a promise individually and collectively. I
Yes,
think
exactly.
Owais
Not-
sahab, Omar, sorry, I would just like to use this phrase distribution of wealth, and you know that just took me back to I interviewed Eid Sahab just a few weeks before he passed away, and he said, and I actually went to check on him how he was doing it. I'd interviewed him a couple of times before, and he started talking because he was on dialysis. Owais
Yeah,
sahab. The term you used, distribution of wealth, this is exactly what he used. And I said, how do you think we can make Pakistan better? And he said, it wasn't an interview, but because he started talking and I got a nod from his son that it's okay, you can just record it. And he said, we can make it better if there is a distribution of wealth, you know, equitable wealth or equal distribution of wealth. And these were his exact
Well,
words.
it doesn't make sense, Muneza or Faiza, or you know, sort of you guys, that to basically to show off that we are basically sacrificing an animal of worth ₹1 million. I mean,
Exactly.
you can sort of, you know, you can at the same time, you can follow a ritual, and at the same time, the rest of the amount can be distributed amongst poor, you
It's
know.
also become like a competition. But I want
Who
to
will sacrifice
Yeah.
the bigger animal?
Yeah, I want to talk about something else. Actually, I want to look at the positive side of things. I want to look at that glass half full. I think that the Pakistani people have sacrificed a lot for this country.
That is true.
I believe that, and I've covered elections in Nepal, as you know, I've covered elections in India, in America. I have never seen anywhere there would be a surge of violence, that there would be a threat to your life.
Yeah, that's true. That's another
And
side.
still politicians would come out and campaign. And you know, there is nothing more precious than your own life.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, you really have to have a conviction of your beliefs.
And they sacrifice their lives.
And they've sacrificed their
Bibi
lives in this
Mohtama
country.
Shaheed,
They've sacrificed
Bilor Saab,
so
and you know,
many.
there's so many.
Owais
so
sahab,
many.
I think maybe you would remember that when Benazir Bhutto came back on the 19th of October
18th of October, you were there, and she
18th
was
of
lucky
October.
to
have
have
escaped
survived.
alive.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was one of the most shocking moments, most devastating moments of my career, where I actually was, I was in the bomb blast. So I just got away with the skin of my teeth. Of course, my hair was sprayed with blood and pieces of flesh. I really saw people being blown up, you know, and they were there still trying to protect their leader, you know, young boys with
Yeah.
the whole future ahead
in
of
front
them.
of them.
Some of them lost their legs.
But they
More
were
than
ready to lay down
150
their lives.
people were killed.
More than 100.
150
It's almost
people.
200 people in the end who
So you see this
who were
compassion, this love. I mean, we still see that. We've seen that in the past, and we still see that nowadays. But do you feel? I mean, coming back to this, the point that Owais Tohid Saab had raised, are we becoming slowly and slowly more superficial? Are we becoming show-offs? I mean, when it comes to,
Of
for
course,
example,
there is
sacrifice
that.
of, he talked about sacrifice of animals that are worth millions.
Right.
Sometimes you have to show it off to your family and friends. Oh, you know, I sacrificed an animal, it was worth this much, and oh, I couldn't do that. So are we slowly and steadily going towards that, or do we still have a basic understanding of the facts of life, of the philosophy that we need to adhere ourselves to?
Look, I mean, I don't want to, I don't want to sit and
Be
moralize,
judgmental.
Yes.
you know, because I think there is enough of that in Pakistan, and there are enough people to do it. We even have Article 62, 63, which demands that you be, beyond any doubt. So, I mean, there is all of that. But let's be real. What real is that we are slowly turning into a consumer culture. So there is obviously a concern. we have become a corporate environment, you know, a commercial environment. So of course that is capitalism is seeping into our very beings. But at the same time, whenever there has been disasters in Pakistan, for example, the floods in Pakistan or the earthquake in Pakistan, I have seen the Pakistani nation rise like I have never seen before. I've seen people bring whatever they ever had to these earthquake areas, to the flooded areas.
Even when we were in school, sorry
Yes.
for cutting you,
Yeah.
I remember we held long drives to raise money for these
Everybody
people.
was involved,
Yeah.
and even during the floods in Sindh, I've been to far-flung areas of Sindh, where I have seen people with their own hands hold the water back, make those, you know, barrages, make those kind of bunks, as they call it. So, I mean, I think that we have to give on this very special occasion a pat on our back to our people, because there is enough kind of sermonizing on
Exactly.
them.
That is
They
so
have
true.
stood up whenever the country has needed them, but I think the question now is not what the people can do for the country, but what the state of Pakistan can do for the people. And I think it's about time that they be given their due rights, because they have always sacrificed
That
and
is true.
always come to the
I
rescue
think
of
it
state.
can go both ways. I mean,
Exactly.
I personally think that, you know,
as you say, in Urdu they say "Tali ek haath se nahi bajti." I mean, nothing happens. That is one side. It always has to be from both sides. But coming on a slightly lighter note, we are Eid ul Azha. Nevertheless, we are also the independence of our country that is coming right around the corner. Do you have any
Fun childhood stories
not
from
childhood
your
stories. Let's
Eid?
see. Fond memories when you were growing up of Eid ul Azha or the Independence Day with your mother, mashallah, who was an icon herself. What do you remember that really still puts a smile to your face?
And I really want to ask, did you ever name your pet the sacrificial animal whenever, because when I was little I used to name them Bashir or Murshid or something like that. Yes, and then
God.
it was so sad.
I should stay away from her.
It was so sad because when, you know, they were butchered, and it was like very devastating.
It's very devastating for children, and especially my brother who loves animals.
All right.
So I remember once we got a lamb, Bhedu, and he named the Bhedu, and you know, of course, the time came when he was going to be slaughtered. So the cook told him that, you know, I'm kind of, you know, sharpening my knives. So he was very young, must have been 5 years old or something. So he got very upset, and that morning we couldn't find the Bhedu. You know, and soon enough we discovered him in his toilet. You know, and him crying that, you know, please kill me before you kill the Bhedu. And then all the male cousins got together and they said, oh, you're just like a girl crying over.
And how old was he?
5 years old. Sacrificial lamb, you know, you have to be tough, wipe your tears. And then he had to put his hand on the
Yes,
that
yes.
knife,
so
and then the knife was kind of used to butcher that lamb. So I can imagine it being very devastating for children. Of course, I was, you know, I was not looking at any of this. I was a very naughty child. But my mother, for example, we used to have a full day when I was younger during Eid. We used to go and meet relatives that we would only meet that one day.
All right.
You know, so it would be all the relatives from my father's side, all the relatives from my mother's side. And I have to say that I preferred the Choti Eid. Because children used to be given Eid, so we used to collect Eid. This one, I was not so keen on it, because there was no money coming in.
But there's one thing, growing up, I always used to collect Eid from my pupos, from my aunts, because I said, I don't know, this is Eid, so I need
have to give
Eid, whether
Eid.
it's Choti Eid or Badi Eid, I don't know.
But
this
you
is
know,
Eid.
one thing that puts a smile to my face is two things actually. The girls would be given from my father's side as Chinyoti, so they would give the girls less than what they would give the boys. So the girls would be given half of that of the boys. And so after we had pooled all our money, my mother would actually divide it equally amongst all of us,
that is
right?
so nice.
Amongst our cousins and us. And then on the 14th of August, I remember, she was a great advocate for peace between India and Pakistan, and she was really a peacemonger, and she peacemaker, and she would always go to the Wagah border with a candle vigil, and there would be a whole delegation of women who, for peace who would come. So there were people like Narmala Deshpande, a very big name. There would be people like Saida. There would be people like you know, the journalist Owais who recently passed away. Kuldeep Nayyar Saab. Kuldeep Nayyar Saab. Even at some points, I.K. Gujral, who was the former Prime Minister of India, they would come because they had formed something called South Asian for Human Rights.
All right.
So protecting your human rights of people across South Asia and bringing your heads together in a huddle to think about ways of how to collaborate on protecting human rights and kind of furthering fundamental rights of people. So I think that for her, every occasion was a moment to talk about peace, was a moment to talk about people's rights, whether they were living on this side of the border or some other side of the border.
But I mean, growing up, you must have had, I mean, do you have any very funny moments to kind of reminisce about as far as your mother is concerned, as far as even your younger brother is concerned, or your father, or anything else that really puts a smile on your face, apart from the equal distribution of wealth?
Okay, let me think about that one.
Okay.
And
We'll go
maybe
to
you can
Faiza.
take a
We'll
round
go to
and then
Faiza.
come back.
I want to ask you, Faiza, what's the one thing that your Eid is incomplete without?
Is the one thing that my Eid is not complete without family.
Family.
Family,
okay.
I mean, obviously. And then I would say henna.
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 Yes.
I love henna. So
When I was little, I used to hate the smell of henna. I don't know how women put it up, but now, since I've grown up now, I love it. I love
I
it.
still don't understand how women
And
put
you
it
know,
up.
guys, and my village, they put on henna. You should try it too sometime.
No, please, thank you. Not a henna guy at all.
You would never know unless you don't
No,
try
thank
it.
you. Thank you so much.
can I
Thank you.
share a funny incident?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
sure.
Okay, so I grew up, in the UAE. But all of these, whatever Muslim, Islamic, our events and days, and like Independence Day was a big deal for us, because I'm still a Pakistani and an expatriate, but I'm not, I don't have a passport of another country. So there's still, I was born somewhere else, which is not my fault, but I still feel this. This connection and this proximity to Pakistan, and my parents used to bring us every year. We used to come and stop by Pakistan wherever we were going for holidays. So I remember there were a couple of Eids. Eid al-Adha was always more fun in Pakistan because it's big, it's the event, and yes, and over there I remember underneath our apartment building, there were a few people who had the goats and the lambs, and this was this week or 10-day ritual before that. Everybody used to take their lambs out for walks. So we didn't have those colorful little accessories, goat accessories over there, but kids came up with their own, those birthday pom-pom stuff. So they would still have things on their goats and say, my goat is bigger than yours and stuff
Or
like that.
prettier than yours.
Okay, I remember one Eid, the goats started falling sick, Owais, for some reason. I don't know, there was something, they had come from somewhere and they started falling sick. Now my father he's an architect by profession, but he's a very soft-hearted, and I think he's a kind of a,
Like my brother.
a homeopath. Yeah, and there's a little homeopath, a little, nature doctor inside him. So my father, he brought brown sugar, gur.
I love the expression homeopathy.
Gur? Yeah.
I
He's
loved
like
it.
things
he's
out
like
there.
a-
loved it.
He's like a mixture of, he'll have
Even when sort of my production team finalizes, or sort of must be the same case with you, and if a guest is like soft spoken, they say like sort of, oh,
He's a
boss, he
homeopath.
has been finalized, but he is bit of
Hakeem.
yeah, please continue.
Yeah, but my dad practically is. So he'll have a natural tip for any ailment, from flu to whatever. So I remember my dad, he covered. We weren't allowed to take, for hygienic reasons, the goats up to the apartment. So they were all down there. It wasn't very cold, I don't remember. So he tied a cloth on the goat and he started feeding it something with sugar and that gur thing. He got it from somewhere, the natural one. And the other kids and they started laughing. They said, "Look at your goat. It's so funny. You've got a little chadar, little blanket over this goat." And really, and sadly, 2 days before the Eid, 2-3 of the other goats passed away, and our goat survived. Sadly, so it was okay and it was healthy. It was
Just because of kushtas and
Yeah.
badam and
So-
akhrot and
Yeah, it was good. It was good. It was good, and a lot of love.
the goat.
And the doctor came and checked the goat, and the goat was fine. And so, we said, obviously it was a traditional thing and a Eid, but we said, okay, so we're having the last laugh now, because all the kids were like, they were making fun of us, and but we said, our goat is fine. Coming to, I think, 14th August, you were asking. So yeah, I remember that, you know, just putting up the jhandiya was a big thing because, you know, we never saw it over there. So just going up on the rooftops and, you know, getting the elders to help us put it. But what really, I think what pained me even then was seeing the little flags or little jhandiya, you know,
On the ground.
which when I started growing older, I started questioning that. I said, why don't we just have one flag rather than, because otherwise we need to take it off and put it away. Yeah, and we used to, whenever we had it in Dubai, so we used to make sure that we had the Pakistani community come in. My parents have always inculcated a lot of, you know, passionate love for Pakistan. And I
That's
think
very important. You know, that adherence to your mother nation is very important.
when you're abroad, especially, you know.
Abroad or in Pakistan,
Yeah.
because I've seen, and Muneza, I'm sure you would agree with me as well, even a lot of Pakistanis being in Pakistan don't have that passion for their country. I feel it's very important to be passionate about
Omar,
your
I think
country,
it's
about the
there.
place that you're
I
in.
think it's there. It's there. You know, like Muneza was earlier saying that, you know, all the positive. It's there, but it's like when you're here, because I've spent so much of my life here. I did my my master's degree here. I was part of the debating circle here. I started my practical journalism here. What happens is when you're in a place, you take it for granted, and it's not like the love is any less.
Maybe.
When you're
I
away,
understand that.
you
That's
realize
correct.
that's your identity.
You get used to it.
Yes.
There's nothing special in it.
If there is no passion, if there is no emotions, then it's like soulless body. You know? I personally think that, you know, sort of I apply that on me as well, and when I form a team of journalists, then I look at them and then, you know, whether they are skilled or they are not skilled, you know. The first thing which I see that their passion, their commitment, you know. I personally think that people in Pakistan are very passionate, very vibrant.
Yes,
agree.
emotional.
And very expressive, you know. Did you get a chance to look at Pakistan matches in the World Cup? Where
Oh
our
yes.
team was not
How can we
were
not?
not doing good, but at the same time, did you get a chance to watch a match between Australia and England, or England versus
They were really
New Zealand?
dared.
It's like my daughter, Risa, she was like, look at them, they're like statues. And they, you know, behave as they are basically watching a concert or a Mozart or
Exactly.
opera performance, you know. They only clap and here we go. Like, you know, we are very passionate
I
people.
remember.
That, you know, sort of in childhood, I remember, I've grown up in a small town, Larkana. So we used to go together to perform prayers, and then I was a spoiled brat and I'm still a brat. And
Very difficult to imagine
I've
that.
been,
I can't imagine
I've
that
been an
either.
Avara person, like, you know, unlike my other family members who were very career oriented, and, you know, they were really worried that what this guy is going to do, you know. So I used to wander and I used to, like, you know, sort of do all sorts of things. I would not go into details. But in childhood, just after performing Eid, I would go to, with my friends, and sit along the banks of mighty river Indus. And then we would eat mangoes if it's summer, and we would, like, you know, do all sorts of things. We spend the whole day, and then come back in the evening. Then we used to have like family get together.
And dress up
So-
a little.
I would dress up a little. I mean, in a sense, yes, shalwar kameez,
Shalwar
shalwar
kameez,
kurta.
waistcoat,
Yeah.
I
Gelled
waistcoat. No, it suits Omar. It doesn't suit me, so
on.
I don't have waistcoats in my wardrobe. But I tell you, when Muneza was mentioning it, the sacrifice among the people, you know, all along the tribal belt, former tribal belt, people sacrificed. We have lost 70,000 people,
Exactly. Two big wars against terrorism.
including the official security forces. And 5,000, 6,000 security officials have sacrificed, you know, their lives and the war and terror. But I think if you ask me, what do you want to make a promise on this day, which symbolizes sacrifice, I would say that the fight against extremism, the fight
Absolutely.
against
I agree.
terrorism.
You're so
I
right.
think that is a real threat to the existence of our state. That is a real threat to the very fabrics of our society. We have had great thousands years of civilization. Unfortunately, we look at it like, sort of, we don't look at it that.
That's
And we
true.
don't showcase that to the rest of the world.
It's very important.
personally
it's
think
very
it's a
important to
collective
highlight
responsibility.
Muneza.
I like to add to what
Yes.
he's saying, because I think that especially in the subcontinent, we have sacrificed in the name of nationhood, we have sacrificed in the name of religion. There has been a lot of blood that has spilled. And I think now there is a realization, as is in the rest of the world, that these are not things that you spill blood on. And I think that in Pakistan there is less realization of that. There needs to be more realization of that, not from the people of Pakistan, but I think from the state of Pakistan. And that needs to be, that point needs to be driven home. When you talked about sacrifice, he was my editor at the time that we were working together at Geo. And I remember there was a wave of terror. Wave of violence.
Every other day there
And
would be a suicide attack. There would be
Especially
like
in Peshawar. I remember
everywhere.
I
In
was
Khyber
just going to
Pakhtunkhwa,
tell a story
Balochistan.
about that. I went and interviewed women who were conducting polio drives. Some of them were kidnapped. One woman was kidnapped. She was about to be married, so fiance broke off his engagement with her. And, she was the sole breadwinner of her family. She lived in a home where her mother was a widow, and the mother was a widow because her father was a policeman and he had been killed due to terror. So in this family, you had the entire family destroyed because of extremism. I went and interviewed one policeman who would stand and guard this one main road at that time that used to lead to the tribal areas. And it was the most susceptible to bomb attacks. And every day he would say that I've already lost my brother. His brother was already lost on that very road that he stood every single day guarding that road. That I've lost my brother to this, but today again I stand, to keep my city safe. And I thought those were the sacrifices of people. And I think that the state owes us. There's a lot of blood that has been spilled. And I think the state owes us to protect its citizens and not to demand blood. This is not how you build societies. You don't demand blood of your citizens. You give them protection. You give them, when we talk about the Medina state or the welfare state, that's when you give protection to your citizens, and that's when you can expect that they will show some kind of passion to you.
Look at our, sort of founding father, Muhammad Ali Jinnah's speech, historic speech, which he delivered on the 11th of August to the Constituent Assembly, 1947. Which is not in our textbook. That you're free to go to your temple, you're free to go to your mosque, you're free to go to your
Any place of
worship
worship in the
places,
state of
and state has nothing to
Hindus
do
will
with religion,
cease to
caste,
be
creed,
Hindus, Muslims cease to
So
be Muslims.
that was basically, that was, in my opinion, that was Mr. Jinnah's vision, which we lost somewhere. So, Independence Day, like what Independence Day is, to celebrate only, or to look back and to look back at our where we faltered
And to try to build a better country in the future. I
How
think
to
that's
build a
very
society. No doubt about that. I have covered bloodbath in Pakistan. I have covered bloodbath in Afghanistan. I lived there for 2 years. I've traveled across Afghanistan from Iraq to Mazar Sharif. I have covered conflict in Israel, Palestinian conflict in Israel for BBC World Service. I have covered Maoist insurgency in Nepal. I have covered Tamil conflict in Sri Lanka. But I tell you honestly, from my heart, that the spirit to bounce back and the resilience which prevails amongst us and amongst our people is amazing. I think that we
But so
should
is
build
Afghanistan's
on
resilience.
that, and to when we look towards future.
okay.
Yes, and I think that you can't really now limit people to boundaries. For example, whatever happens in Afghanistan will have a trickle-down effect or a direct effect in
And it
Pakistan.
has.
And
It
it has. It has.
Faiza, I mean, what has happened? I'm sorry, ma'am.
Yes,
Just like
no, of course, yes.
I'm just saying that we have suffered
Of course, we have. And
economically,
yes,
socially. Our social fabric has been tarnished because of that conflict, which we got into, and now we are trying to get out of it, and I hope and I wish and I pray that it gets resolved. And
But you know what worries me? Sorry, I think I should give you some. But anyway, what worries me really with Afghanistan is that now with they initiated these talks with the Taliban, and they will suddenly have a place at that table. And we all know their views. We've all seen them in power. They have been cruel. They have been especially cruel to women. And I feel that as a woman in Pakistan, whatever happens in Afghanistan to the women in Afghanistan will have an effect on me. So I believe in making linkages of people for their own rights, and that's what my mother taught me. That is something she believed in. For example, she was a UN Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial killing and was actually reporting out of Afghanistan. And one thing she said to me was the biggest mistake that the Americans have made in Afghanistan is that they have given money and funding to NGOs and not to state institutions, not to political parties, not to the bar associations, and they have not really strengthened the institutions.
But Muneza, the thing is, whatever be in the past, whatever has happened in the past, we look back at it and we need to understand what we've done, positive and negative in the past, and try to build on that in such a way that our future becomes more secure, and we can look at our future generations with the hope and with that prayer that we can live in an era, in an atmosphere, in a region where peace is going to prevail. Because we only learn from our mistakes, Muneza, and this is, I think, very important for us as human beings. This is one of our traits, isn't it, Faiza?
Yes, 2 points here, Omar. Yes, obviously, human beings need to keep learning, but history does come full circle. We've seen it again and again. The point of extremism, I'd like to add, not add, because I think Owais Saab has elaborated brilliantly on that. Not a lot to add, but a different aspect of it is that extremism, Pakistan has paid a very heavy price. We know, the world knows. We need to make sure the world knows. We need to hammer it more. But extremism, as in, parties coming up on the basis of extremism, is on the rise in the West. And we need
all
to,
over the world.
in France, in Germany, and these parties
In America.
in America,
In America.
in Britain as well.
In
And
Britain.
we see it's becoming a part of their politics. We're talking about certain religions and
Nationalism
certain
is
segments is actually part of
Right-wing
the
men are on
part
the
of
rise.
policy. So extremism.
And Modi.
How can you forget BJP?
And Russia.
Yes,
And Russia.
Thank you for reminding us that. How can you?
Hindutva, this is one policy that has been hammered down Indians in the last few years.
Indians
And
are very
recently
worried
there's
because
been a surge of
they've
it.
actually, United Nations has actually now spoken about it, and I know these different newspaper editors and all people who are not Pakistanis who are actually saying India needs to be careful because now you're being termed as Lynchistan outside. And coming to the point of Afghanistan, again, whatever happens on our border, no matter you have this, you want to build a wall of a border like Mexico, or you want to, so we pull up these borders. But whatever will happen, it will have an effect, especially we've been hosting refugees.
And in the millions.
But I was speaking to a few Afghanis. There is also this other side of the picture from and these are people who are working in Afghanistan, very normal, middle class, or lower middle class, educated probably 3-4, years in school, that's it. And these people, this is again a perspective. Their perspective is, who is Mr. Ghani? We don't know. He's never lived, his life. He's been studying abroad. I know he was doing some research in Karachi for a long time. But who is he? We've never seen. I don't think he would even win, the councillor elections. So this is one perspective from an Afghanistani person. And this person grew up in Peshawar. And is very sad that he cannot live in Peshawar anymore. And is very sad that he has to go and take the Afghanistani passport. And he told me, he said, when I go back to Afghanistan, there is an Indian person sitting on the immigration counter. He is part of the Indian, I don't know whether they call them official officers or not, because I didn't witness that. And he checks my passport and he says, why did you go to Peshawar again? Next time I don't want to see you visiting Peshawar again. This person grew up his teen years and everything in Peshawar, and he says, my heart is here. We come here for surgeries. So again, a perspective. That who is Mr. Ghani? So who are these leaders? Do we also look at the other side? Who is imposing them on the people, on an illiterate population that has been, through decades of war, and you've not been able to rule on the Afghan spirit, So again,
but I was recently in Afghanistan. I was reporting from Kabul and Mazar-e Sharif. you see, the thing in Afghanistan is that there is a real desire amongst young people, and there are
A
I mean,
lot of
most
young
of the
people.
people are under the age of 30 in Afghanistan, right? They're all very, some of them are very educated, very brilliant. There is a desire to see elections, to say that we will want to vote whoever we want to vote. But I have to say one thing, especially
They
from a
should get
woman's
that.
perspective, is this, that during the Taliban regime, we saw girls' schools being shut down,
Being blown up.
so girls lost their childhood during the time of the Taliban. They only went back to college when the Americans came. So you know, this whole idea of who's the occupier and who's not, frankly, you know, when I asked them this question, they said we don't really care whether you're black, white or yellow. Of course we would like to have control over our own destiny. However, we saw college life under their rule. I mean, this is exactly what they said to me, and I was quite aghast because I'd never heard that before. So I think it's not just about, you know, your own people can also be extremely cruel to you. The question really is that people of the country should have a right to determine their own destiny through an election.
And
that is the
need
important
to have a voice of their own. I think that's
Yes.
very important. Owais sahab, when
Yes.
it comes to having a voice of your own, I mean, we've talked about Afghanistan, we've talked about, of course, countries that have a very rightist attitude, have started to have a rightist attitude in the last few years, which brings me to one of the oldest conflicts, which is Kashmir, and then the second is the Palestine-Israeli issue. I mean, how can we not think of those brethren who are also under such extreme conditions and also sacrificing every day for their rights? Let's talk about Palestine. I mean, it's also time that when we talk of sacrifice, Eid al-Azha talks about sacrifice, it is also not about just sacrificing animals, but also trying to sacrifice maybe your ego, maybe your own self, maybe your point of view, and understand what the others want and try to go towards a world that becomes one that is led by governments that go toward for peace and that are compassionate,
peace and
not only to people around them but also to people in their region. What is your point of view on that?
Omar, I mean, in a sense that I think if you can term worst kind of aggression, that worst kind of aggression, naked aggression, is happening in Indian occupied Kashmir and towards Palestine by Israeli forces. And I have witnessed both. And we have grown up, and it's been like, you know, sort of, I mean, I have witnessed decades of history since the 70s when I was a child. Kashmiris are suffering the worst kind of state oppression and aggression from India. Now there's that it's an indigenous movement. After Burhan Wani's martyrdom,
Yes, no doubt about it.
I think there is an indigenous movement, and there's no doubt about that. If you talk to educated people across India, they would vouch for it. In the past, we won't go into past. We may have made mistakes, but right now, this wave of movement is purely indigenous, young people, and they have so much hatred, anger. The educated young boys and girls who pelt stones at the Indian forces in India and Kashmir. Look, Omar Abdullah, he's never been considered a Pakistani friend. He is raising voice against Modi and against
Mehbooba
India. Mehbooba Mufti has never been sympathetic to Pakistan. She has been raising voice.
And they're all vocal against,
So,
you know,
I mean,
35A, you know, abrogating 35A.
Yes,
It's just-
Arundhati Roy, each and every one of them are pointing fingers at Delhi that you are not realizing that you are basically, you are not, you're not realizing that how you're putting this Kashmir into a burner which is going to burn not only Kashmir, unfortunately Kashmir, but also India.
That is true.
And now we hear the voices, sympathetic voices from international community.
Yes.
You know, sort of
But
that
you
that
know,
is the change.
yes.
That is the change. And on Afghanistan, I would add one point only. That one tribesman described the situation and its impact and fallout in Pakistan so well. I remember, vividly remember, the old guy, turban, bearded, and he said that, you know, every time when earthquake happens in Afghanistan, lava erupts in the tribal belt and in Pakistan, and that is true. So we have to safeguard all kinds of lavas, you know, sort of which are
All right.
erupting in
On
Pakistan.
on the whole thing of safeguarding lavas and safeguarding people and people's rights, whether it be in our own country, in the countries around us, and striving for that, striving also to curtail ourselves, striving also to kind of sacrifice ourselves for the good of the community, for the good of the nation, for the good of the region, is all what Eid al-Adha also is kind of part of. This is also what the philosophy behind Eid al-Adha is: sacrifice. Sacrifice is very important because it teaches you to become more humane, to become more human,
tolerant.
and to become more tolerant. As we are ending our show, I'd like to ask one last comment from all three of you.
And
a very
a
quick
message.
snap response. What Eid al-Adha means to you? What are the three words that come to your mind when somebody says Eid al-Adha? Muneza.
Well, sacrifice comes to my mind, but would you allow me to add something to what
Please,
Owais
all
Saab
right.
has already said? I think in terms of Kashmir, and I've reported out of Kashmir from Srinagar, I think what is really important now is, and it's important to look at, that they're going to now pass a law, which means that they will now allow other people from outside of Kashmir to buy land in Kashmir. And that is going to change the demographic.
And
That
then-
is something that the Kashmiri leadership is fighting against. I have to say that in the Trump-Khan meeting, there was a lot of hope that was generated from that meeting because of the statements that President Trump has made. One of the responsibilities of state leaders is that the hope that they give to their people, that they have the ability to walk that talk, and not just give hope to the people, but also give them the means to realize their dreams.
Fine.
And I think that is something that we will have to wait and watch. As far as sacrifice is concerned, I hope that we are not asked to sacrifice as the people of and the citizens of this South Asia every single day. I hope Eid al-Adha just comes once a year.
And inshallah, it will definitely. But sacrifice is the word that comes to your mind. Faiza, what comes to your mind when somebody asks you what Eid al-Adha means to you?
Sacrifice, definitely, you know, because Eid al-Adha and a goat comes in my mind, or a lamb, or a guy. And by the way, you know, you were talking about being able to sacrifice your own lamb. There's also this. They say it's very important that if you are doing a sacrifice, you know, then you need to be able to sort of divide the meat yourself, get yourself. And I did that. I started doing that about a year or two back. And you know, obviously, I can eat meat, but the smell of meat and washing so much meat or just packaging it was a completely different experience. And just kind of making, you know, keeping very little. Obviously, we're supposed, there are you know, there are certain portions you need to keep for your house and for the neighbors, for the poor and all.
Yeah.
But just like Owais was saying earlier, you know, we're eating meat throughout the year, alhamdulillah. So just keeping a very small, you know, sort of
Portion for
insignificant portion, or just so that, you know, you're kind of just completing that little ritual and just giving out most. I think just getting, just kind of dividing it with my hands and kind of saying. And then in Pakistan, we have this very nice thing that you keep people.
I started visualizing Faiza distributing.
Yes, I had already.
Like, you know, sort of
Not
packing
in the
My
it
daddy
back.
used to do that.
in the kitchen. And you know, when my mother told me this, and I was thinking meat, and you know, she said, you know, if you're doing a sacrifice,
You
so
should
it's
do it
actually it is
Participate in the whole
I don't know whether mandatory or obligatory is the right word, but you must divide it. So from that, I think what I learned, Owais, was that I've not just paid lip service or just given my money and the guy Kasai has come and he's done his work and somebody and the houseboy has divided it. What I felt was that I actually participated in that, even in that, the sacrificing the goat that day and saying, okay, I'm making these many portions for the poor, and people keep ringing your bell here in Pakistan. And I think, Omar, sacrifice obviously would come to a Muslim's mind with Eid al-Adha, but given our discussion, and both of you are very positive hosts, and I saw you kept bringing the discussion to, what can we sacrifice as people? So I think just all year round, again, I will be quoting Owais because, he kind of encompassed the discussion that just sacrificing our egos and our stubbornness the year round, whether it is in the media, whether it is, another profession in Pakistan, whether it is our politicians, for the greater good, like Muneza was saying, so that the people in Pakistan can actually...
Your ego.
Final word, but a short word nevertheless, Owais.
Kasai should not make that much of an amount on Eid days. I personally think that we should not stuck in rituals only. And should follow the true spirit of sacrifice.
Yeah.
All right. We should follow the true spirit and essence of sacrifice.
And we should sacrifice our egos.
Exactly. And be more compassionate, not only towards people around us, but also towards those who are needy in our nation, in our society. Look for them, try to help them out, and try to distribute as much as you can, not only at the time of Eid al-Adha, ladies and gentlemen, but also other times of the year, because that is what Allah Almighty sees us for, and that is what makes us a nation. That is what makes us more compassionate, stronger, more fortunate as a nation. We've been blessed with this beautiful country that is Pakistan. Let's make it even stronger, more beautiful, more resilient, full of people that are not only compassionate, but put our country forward and make it into a developed nation. Omar, Khalid, Rida Shah, and with our three very eminent guests,
Eid
I would
Mubarak.
say panelists.
Eid
Let's
Mubarak.
say Eid Mubarak together.
Eid
Okay, one, two, three. Eid
Mubarak.
Mubarak. Ladies and gentlemen, Allah Hafiz and Eid al-Adha Mubarak to all of you. Take
I
care.
hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.